Hello, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, where we tackle the invisible forces in health that tend to hide in plain sight. I'm Ethan Foster, your resident observer of the human condition, who tries to keep his internal clock set to nap time as often as possible.
And I'm Alara Sky, the quick-witted voice that says, "Hold on, Ethan. You mean that's the only time your clock is set for? That might explain your confusion about AM versus PM."
Now you know why my sense of time is like that old clock in the corner of your grandfather's living room, slightly off and chimes at the wrong hours. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something that most folks barely consider in their daily routine, the circadian rhythm.
Because clearly, if we paid any real attention to our body's internal clock, I wouldn't have ended up binge-watching that historical documentary at 2 a.m. and then spending all morning trying to remember my own name.
I love that documentary, by the way. Nothing says quality entertainment, like 14th century land disputes while your eyes are half shut and your body's screaming for melatonin.
It's educational, though. Let's talk about this internal clock, officially known as the circadian rhythm. This 24-hour cycle is orchestrated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, in the brain. It's basically the reason we get tired at night and are supposed to be bright-eyed in the morning, emphasis on supposed to be.
They call the SCN the master clock, which I find interesting. Makes me envision a tiny conductor waving around a baton at all my bodily functions to keep them in rhythm. Except my internal maestro might need a refresher course, because every once in a while, he cues the symbols at 3 a.m.
I know that feeling. My internal conductor occasionally says, "Hey, 2 a.m. is the perfect time to make a snack run." Meanwhile, the rest of my body is like, "Shouldn't we be unconscious right now?"
And that, dear listeners, is exactly the point. When your internal clock is disrupted, the result often shows up on the bathroom scale, or, in your case, with your half-eaten midnight munchies.
Funny you bring up the scale because a whole bunch of people wage war with their weight. They go on these heroic diet and exercise quests, green juice in one hand, dumbbell in the other, and still see minimal progress. Turns out, if your clock is off, the ship's already half sunk before you even set sail.
Consider how the circadian rhythm plays a role in insulin sensitivity. When everything is running on time, the body processes sugar nicely. But when your internal clock is in chaos, the body gets moody about insulin. And if the body decides, nah, not responding properly to this hormone today, guess who's going to store fat a bit more generously?
And that's not the only hormonal twist. High cortisol can lead to a bigger appetite and encourage your body to stash that extra energy in your waistline. Meanwhile, leptin, our trusty hormone that says, "Put down the fork, we're full," doesn't get its message across as effectively when the clock is all messed up. Next thing you know, you're rummaging through the fridge like you're foraging in the wild.
I've been there. That late-night fridge raid for leftover pizza is something I'd blame entirely on my circadian meltdown. It's like my stomach's open for business at all the wrong times.
And for those who work night shifts, rotating shifts, or have a habit of pulling all-nighters, you might already be well acquainted with the repercussions. Studies have shown that shift workers often struggle more with weight gain and other metabolic troubles.
It's as if your body's still back in a different time zone, fighting with your daily schedule. The circadian confusion has real consequences beyond just feeling tired.
And speaking of real consequences, there's a fascinating new development in understanding exactly how our body's clocks tick. Turns out the liver isn't just focusing on detoxing those questionable burritos you had. It has clock genes of its own, and these genes actually talk to the brain.
It's like a secret phone call from the liver to the master clock in our heads. "Hello, SCN, this is your friendly neighborhood liver. We've got a glucose situation here. Better get that feeding center in the brain on the line."
You jest, but that's practically what happens. Researchers looked at how the liver uses the hepatic vagal afferent nerve. Let's call it HVAN for short. This nerve transmits signals from the liver straight to the brain, letting it know about our metabolic situation.
Now, here's the kicker. When those liver clock genes get disrupted, that HVAN line starts sending weird signals, kind of like a faulty telegraph operator. So your body ends up thinking, why don't we eat at midnight and keep going until dawn?
Yes, it encourages your feeding centers to shift into round-the-clock buffet mode. That's obviously not ideal for your waistline. And because the liver clock is normally in tune with the brain clock, a disruption basically puts them at odds, with the body stuck in the middle.
Funny enough, in a lab setting, they severed the HVAN nerve in mice with disrupted liver clocks, and that actually normalized the mice's eating patterns. Obviously, we're not recommending drastic nerve interventions, but it shows how critical this line of communication is.
It's all about synergy between different internal clocks. Turns out the SCN is not the only conductor. We've got an entire orchestra of mini-clocks in our organs. When they start playing out of sync, the resulting cacophony can lead to things like weight gain, hormone havoc, and random cravings.
Speaking of out of sync, modern life is a veritable festival of circadian disruption. You've got artificial lighting, blue light from smartphones, Netflix marathons that run into the wee hours, shift work, and social jet lag. where the weekend schedule is basically an alternate universe compared to weekdays.
Social jet lag is that phenomenon where folks work Monday through Friday, get minimal sleep, then try to make it up by snoozing half the day on Saturday. By Sunday night, their internal clock is cowering in a corner, clutching its baton, going, "I give up."
Exactly. So Monday morning, your body's still in, it's 2 a.m. in Honolulu mode, but your alarm says you should be at your desk. Great for fueling coffee consumption, but not so fabulous for metabolic harmony.
Let's not forget the lure of late-night social media scrolling. That bright screen just confuses your brain even more. It sees that blue light and thinks, "Sun's still out, time to stay awake." Meanwhile, you're lying in bed counting ceiling tiles.
All these factors combine to sabotage what could be a healthy circadian rhythm. And once that rhythm goes off kilter, you see the domino effect on your metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and appetite regulation.
So if you're struggling with weight issues, it might not just be about the morning donut run. It could be that your internal timing is all scrambled, making your system store extra calories.
The big question is, how do we reset the clock? Because clearly my comedic timing hasn't reset for years, and I'd like to at least fix my metabolic timing.
First, prioritize sunlight exposure, particularly in the morning. Just 10 to 15 minutes of natural light early in the day helps your SCN figure out that it's time to be awake and alert.
And then in the evening, we do the opposite. Dim the lights, shut off the electronics, or at least use a blue light filter if absolutely necessary. We let melatonin do its job so we can fall asleep naturally.
Yes, that's how to soothe the internal conductor. We're basically providing clear day-night signals so it can maintain a consistent beat. And consistency is key. Regular sleep and wake times get your body into a dependable rhythm.
It's like training for a marathon. You can't go sporadically run 1 mile here and 12 miles there. You need a schedule. Same concept for sleep and wake times.
Absolutely. Then we also have meal timing, which is more important than people realize. If you eat all over the clock, breakfast at noon one day, 6 a.m. the next, your liver, pancreas, and the rest of the digestive crew get confused.
That might lead to your insulin levels playing hide and seek, never sure when to show up.
Exactly. So aim to eat meals around the same time each day. And try not to do heavy grazing at midnight when your body is supposed to be focusing on repair, not digestion.
Let's also acknowledge exercise, that magical potion that helps regulate our circadian rhythm. Moving your body in daylight hours not only helps burn calories, but also reinforces that natural awake cycle.
There's something about daylight exercise that helps calibrate our clocks. It sends a strong signal. Hello, body, it's daytime. We're exerting energy. Let's ramp up activity.
So, we have these main points for synchronization. Consistent wake and strict sleep times, bright light in the morning, reduced artificial light at night, regular meal times, and physical activity during daylight.
Those are the big pillars. They help us align with that 24-hour rhythm. And once that alignment is restored, you'll often find it's easier to manage weight, maintain energy, and generally not feel like a groggy zombie at your desk.
Speaking of groggy zombies, I'd like to share a personal anecdote. There was a time I was convinced that if I just worked out at midnight and ate salads all day, I'd lose weight quickly. Instead, I found myself wide-eyed until 3 a.m., and the scale refused to budge.
So you discovered the joys of circadian sabotage.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't realize that by engaging in intense exercise late at night, under bright gym lights, my entire body clock was forced to act like it was daytime. Then I'd try to sleep right after pumping iron, but my body was still in full, let's do more reps mode.
Hence the wide-eyed Ethan at 3 a.m. It's a good illustration of how we can unknowingly undermine our own efforts.
Once I switched my workouts to the late afternoon or early morning, at least to a time when the sun was out, I started sleeping better. Magically, my morning weigh-ins began to show progress.
Funny how that works. We're diurnal creatures. Sure, technology allows us to do things at any hour, but our biology is still operating on the ancient day-night blueprint.
And when we fight that blueprint, our body fights back with cravings, mood swings, and stubborn belly fat.
We become living proof that you can't outsmart millions of years of evolutionary programming with just a bright phone screen.
So, for anyone listening who's locked in that weight loss struggle, remember that your circadian rhythm might be the missing puzzle piece. You can do all the salad eating and treadmill running you want, but if your clock is off, the results might be underwhelming.
Addressing that internal schedule is crucial. Just imagine how it feels to wake up refreshed without 10 alarms, to actually feel hungry at mealtimes rather than rummaging for snacks at 1 a.m., and to see your efforts on the scale start to pay off.
It might sound too good to be true, but it's actually our default setting, when we live in harmony with the sun and minimize artificial intrusions.
I always laugh when I think about how historically, humans rose with the sun and wrapped up their day by candlelight. Now we're streaming movies at midnight, bathing in LED screens, then chugging caffeine to cope with the fallout.
It's a fascinating, if somewhat chaotic leap in lifestyle. Perhaps we should do a reality show called Return to Candlelight. I can see it now. City dwellers trying to function on medieval lighting.
They'd be rummaging in the dark for their slippers at 9 p.m., then hitting the sack by 9:30 because there's nothing else to do. The day's entertainment might be the flickering shadows on the wall.
And ironically, they'd probably end up losing weight, feeling healthier, and waking up bright-eyed. But alas, we live in a modern world with deadlines, technologies, and streaming services.
Which is why we say, adapt intelligently. Get that morning sun, keep your evenings dim, and respect your circadian boundaries as much as you can.
Another factor we should mention is stress. Chronic stress can throw your clock off too. Elevated cortisol at night is basically a stay awake signal, not a lullaby.
Right. So if you're juggling stressful tasks before bed, like answering frantic work emails, your body might interpret that as, we're still hunting and gathering, can't sleep yet.
Hunting and gathering emails. That's modern life in a nutshell.
So maybe incorporate relaxation routines before bed. Read a book, take a warm bath, or just stare at the ceiling quietly, hoping the day's tension melts away.
Staring at the ceiling can be surprisingly relaxing if you let your mind just wander. Of course, I usually end up wondering why there's a crack up there, but that's another story.
As long as you're not on your phone, your circadian rhythm might be cheering in the background.
So, we've covered the basics, the SCN in your brain, the mini clocks in your organs, the HVN nerve that relays messages from the liver, and how disruptions lead to weight gain. We've also talked about the major culprits in modern society and how to mitigate them with consistent schedules and strategic light exposure.
If there's one takeaway message from all this, it's that your body thrives on routine, even if your mind wants variety. The circadian rhythm loves consistency, so give it what it wants.
Yes, consistency is the not-so-secret sauce, and it's free. You don't have to purchase an expensive gadget or enroll in complicated classes. All you have to do is respect bedtime and wake time, get some sun, watch what and when you eat, and move that body during daylight.
It might not sound flashy, but the results can be pretty spectacular. Improved weight management, better hormonal balance, and more energy for the day.
To me, that's worth a whole lot more than chasing after the latest miracle supplement or diet trend.
Absolutely. Remember that new study about the liver-brain dialogue? It's a reminder that we're elegantly designed with self-regulating systems. If we provide the right cues, our bodies can do amazing things without us micromanaging every calorie.
The biggest challenge is that modern life is like a loud party that never ends, with bright lights and gadgets screaming for our attention. We have to learn to step away from the chaos at times and give our internal conductor a chance to lead the symphony properly.
Right. And in doing so, you'll likely see benefits in your waistline, your mood, and even your ability to handle that chaotic party when you do step back in.
Well, Ilara, I'd say we've successfully pinned down the importance of staying in sync with that 24-hour clock. Our show is, after all, Dr. Mercola's cellular wisdom. And it seems the wisdom here is that biology really does follow a schedule.
And if we don't follow along, biology hits us with consequences. It's not personal, it's just science.
I love when you say, it's just science. Makes me feel better about those nights I tried to defy the laws of nature.
Science always wins in the end. But we can harness it by doing things that make sense for our bodies. Sleeping and waking at consistent times, being mindful about meal timing, grabbing some morning sun, and dimming the evening lights.
And that, dear friends, might be the missing piece in your weight loss journey.
So there you have it. The next time your scale refuses to move, don't just blame carbs or the number of squats you're doing. Take a peek at your clock, your circadian clock.
Exactly. If you get that clock back in sync, you might find your body a lot more cooperative.
This has been Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom with me, Ilara Sky. Living proof that comedic timing and circadian timing sometimes clash, but it's worth the effort to set them straight.
And I'm Ethan Foster, your friendly neighborhood realist, whose circadian conductor occasionally insists on an encore well past midnight. Thank you for joining us. Remember, your internal clock is ticking. Treat it right and it'll reward you handsomely.
Couldn't have said it better. Good luck resetting those clocks, everyone. Now go get some sun and watch your mornings get brighter in every sense.
Until next time, keep listening to that inner maestro. It might just give you the best performance of your life.